Okay guys, welcome back to our car modeling tutorial here. Today we are going to be expanding on our model a little bit. In the last episode what we did was we worked towards completing all of the bumper section here. So in between the episodes I just tidied up the mesh a little bit, pulled a few points here and there, but what we're going to do now is jump straight into modeling the lower section of our front bumper here before we head up the bonnet and potentially up and over the roof. Before jumping then onto the rear section of the car here. So, first things first, what I've got here is a few reference images open. So we can see the majority of this section here we got complete in the previous episode. In my blueprints it's a little bit hard to see this section, so I'm hoping to pull up some front views here so we can see what's going on down there. So it's looking like our lips here actually finish here rather than going all the way underneath. That's for that black section there, and we can see that we've got some kind of bridge bit going along at the bottom here. So we'll work on this bit and then we'll start to work our way up on the bonnet and over the top of the car. So first things first, this section here, if we look like we can get that actually positioned just around about here, we can get that pretty much in position and left until a little bit later on. So we can grab these points here and pull those up and around there. Okay, so that bit should be fine for there. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to work on the section here underneath. So in order to achieve that, it looks like I'm actually going to have to extrude this section in here. So again, if we right click here, we can select the edges. What we can do is click on this bottom section there, hold Control E, hit the little button here in order to take it onto the world view, and we're just going to drag that section in there. Now what we'll eventually do is we'll drag all of these sections in here to meet it, but for now, just to make sure that our model isn't getting too complicated and it's going to allow us a lot of space for editing here, we're just going to bring this one bit in just now. And it looks to me like what we're going to need to do is add a line, so we can see that starts a little bit further back there. So what we'll do is we will add a line going across this edge here. Okay, so what we're going to do, use the front view here in order to find out how far along this section here we actually need to add this section through. So we're going to use our mesh tools. We're going to insert an edge loop, and we will drop one just on top there and one just underneath here. Okay, that's looking good. So what we're going to do now is we can see that we have our line section selected here. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab these points here that we've got, and we're just going to pull this section out a little bit there, just so it's not a completely flat surface. And then we're going to select the face here, and we are going to Control E because we want to extrude this section again. We're going to hit on the world option there, and we're just going to pull this point out. What we want to do is want to make sure that we're following all the way to the end here, so we can see that we've got the front section. So we're going to work on the point, and then and then what we'll be doing here is we're going to be working back through the section there. Okay, so first things first here is we are going to delete this extra face on the edge here. We don't need that there. We're also going to delete the face on the back here. Again, we don't need this face here. It's going to make it a little bit easier for us to edit it should we need to. And on the vertex here, just like last episode, we're going to hold X and we're going to snap this to the center of the grid here. So holding X on all these points here is going to snap that bang in the middle for us. Cool. So what we've got now is we can see that we've got our extrusion going down underneath there, which is looking good. We're going to make sure that this is sat nicely in the middle here. Good. And we are also going to make sure that these points here are sitting a little bit lower. Perfect. Okay. So we can see on the picture as well that this section is quite curved, and we can also see that this section here practically comes out to meet the front lip. Okay. So what we're going to need to do here is we're going to need to use the side view. And what we're going to do here is we're going to pull out this side section here until it roughly meets the center of the section. Looks like we need to pull it down just a little bit there. Okay, it's looking good. So what we're going to do here is we're going to insert a few edge loops. So we're going to use our mesh tools, insert edge loop here, and we're going to pull one in the center here, roughly in the center, like this. So we're going to pull one out there, but we can see in the picture here that it actually comes to a point just here. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and again insert an edge loop roughly where we think that point is, which I think it's about here. Straighten this edge up slightly by using the scale tool, and then we're going to pull this out here. Okay, so we can kind of see there, if we pull this out maybe a little bit more, that's going to give us kind of that little lip that's in there as well. So that's going to allow us here to pull this section out a bit further, so it's a bit more straighter edge in the center there. And we'll insert one more edge loop just here. And again, we're going to pull that out. Okay, that's looking good. Now, on our picture, it looks like this is considerably thinner. So, working on this center section here, the front view, we can drag this down to make sure that we're matching the curvature again. And then we're going to pull these front sections here, pull those down a bit just so that they're a bit pointier. I'm going to pull this front section here a little bit up. That is then going to allow us to take these sections, pull them quite far in, as we can see that the lip is quite large, and then we can pull them up here. Oops. That's point selected. We can pull them up again, but another selected there. We can pull these points up here to match our orthographic image, so we see that we've kind of got that correct angle there. And then what we'll do is we'll pull this middle section up as well. So we need to pull this in and to the side there again to make sure that we're maintaining the angle there. Cool. I can try and get a nice bit of shape to that as well. Perfect. And then with this bottom section here, what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that these are practically a straight line. Drag those down a little bit. Cool. Okay, so that section there is looking good. So we won't actually see this once we've extruded this section of the bumper in. So that's looking pretty good. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to take our bonnet up, and once we've taken the bonnet up, we'll have a look at extruding in these sections here, ready to put the grille in place as well. So, in order to work on the bonnet here, we've got a little bit to consider. First things first is we can see that we have our bonnet line here, which isn't actually in line with this point here. You can see that we have these indentations in the bonnet here as well. And then once we go out to the wing here, we can see that we've got one line going down the arch there, and then we can basically have some topology in here just to reflect what we've got under the headlight there. So let's just make sure that this is matching nicely here. Okay. Cool. So What we're going to do now then is we are going to extrude up, and then we will add some edge loops in exactly where we need them. So we're going to right click here, select our edge, and we're going to select all of these edges here. That is going to work for the bonnet. And we're going to Control E. And just like before, we're going to use the world option, but this time we're going to pull this all the way up to the top here. And we're going to get these vertices in their positions, and then we will look to position them sideways. So we can see this one here is going to follow the line of the bonnet just there, and we can see that the best place for this one would be to follow it all the way along and then stop there on that corner for us. This section here is inside this crease, so that's where we want this to stay. So we're just going to push this up like that. And then we will align these nicely on this bonnet section here. Perfect. What we're then going to do is make sure that they're positioned nicely on the side of our image as well. As we can see, we're fairly flat, so what we'll do is we'll bring those up here. So on the front of our car here, it's probably going to be the easiest to follow the line, so as we pull these up, make sure that these are sitting nicely at the top of the bonnet here. Again, since we've got them positioned nicely at the top, we're going to try and avoid pulling on the x-axis arrow there. Cool. So what we're going to try to do now is we're going to try to get some cuts in place, one of which is going to form the actual line here, and then one of which is going to form this section there, and then it'll probably be nice to get another line going up just to maintain any shape that we have going here. So in order to do that, we're going to use our mesh tools. We're going to insert our edge loop. Now for this section here, we're going to try and go as far over to the left as possible. The reason we're going to do that is because we don't want too many lines in the same place here. So before we add any of the other lines, we're just going to make sure that this is looking as good as possible. So after adding this in, we're going to pull a few vertices here just to make sure that it's sitting pretty nicely where it should do. One thing to remember now, because we've got some sections going underneath that, we want to make sure that we're selecting the correct points and we're not editing elements on the top and the bottom of this model here. Okay. We'll make sure that that's sitting nicely. So we want this point actually to be practically over here. Pull that over there and make sure that's sitting good in both views. What we're going to do now is we're going to make another edge loop here. This time it's going to be for the actual bonnet line itself. So I'm going to drag that there. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing again. We're going to grab these vertices here. We're just going to pull them slightly. So I'm going to pull them down here and make sure that this curvature here is maintained. Okay. And what we want to do in this top view is we want this now to sit exactly on the point of the hood there. We want to make sure in this front view that it sits in exactly where it should be. Cool. What we're going to do then is put one more edge loop in here. So we're going to use our mesh tools again, insert edge loop, and we're going to stick it bang in the middle here, just to make sure that we can maintain a bit of this edge. Oops. Here. Okay, now one thing just to consider is making sure that all of these sections are moved accurately going forward. We don't want it to be a case that in this section here we're going to have a little bit of a wobbly mesh. It may be beneficial to split these up at the end here. So what we'll do is, going down towards this section here, is we'll pull these points just to give them a little bit more breathing room in between each other. Good. Okay, it's looking good. So now we've got all these points in place for our bonnet here. what we're going to do is we're going to get some edge loops which is running across the way. So we're going to have our insert edge loop tool. We're going to bring in a few at once here. Firstly, we're going to bring in one down here, which is going to start off our crease at the top. Then we're going to bring in one at the top here, which is going to finish off the crease. So we get these in position just now, it means that we'll have to move less going forward. So if we go drag these two together here, just to make sure that we're keeping the equal distance between the two. And we'll do the same down here. So we want this section here to move over here so that we can get our line there for our crease, which is looking good. Okay. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that these are sitting nicely as well, because now that we've had these sections in, we can see that we need to move them all up slightly in terms of location. So we'll bring them all together because we've got roughly the correct shape going forward. So if we bring them all up together like that, we know that we're going to maintain roughly where we want them to be, and if we do need to adjust anything, we can do that as we go. Okay. Cool. So now we have this line here which is going to create the crease in the bonnet, and what we'll do is we're just going to create two more edge loops, one of which is going to be placed in line with this light here. So we'll drop that there, and again what we'll do on the side here is we're just going to drag it up just to make sure that we're maintaining the curvature of the crease there, and then we are going to add one more in just in between these two here. So we're creating a nice decent grid as we go. Perfect. So because we've already made this line here, we know that these lines are going to be sitting nicely with this crease there. The only thing that we actually need to do here is to pull these points just to make sure that our bonnet line is following as it should. Cool. Now what we want to do is just make sure that there's nothing there which is bobbling where it shouldn't be. Awesome. Okay, to finish this episode off, what we're going to do is we are going to extrude the edges of our bonnet here, our bumper, sorry. So we just want to make sure that we're still following the right lines in here before we do anything, because as soon as we start to extrude we're going to be creating loads of different points. So we just want to make sure that in this section here it's going to be all in position first. Okay. I think what we need to do here is just straighten all of these together. There's quite a flat edge there. And then we can do the same to the bottom edges here. Cool. Just to make sure that it's looking perfect, so we're not going to need to make any more changes to this edge as we do extrude to make this inner edge here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to drag all of our bottom facing edges here. Okay. And we are going to hit Control E. On the world here, we're just going to bring them in like this. Perfect. So as we can see from the blueprints here, that our top section needs to come down a little bit. our bottom section needs to come up a little bit as well. So we can use our view here just to try and gauge the correct distance there. And what we want to do here is we want to bring all of our center vertices, the ones that we straightened out here, to drop those down just like so. And we want to make sure that we get these as close to the correct depth as possible. Okay, that's looking good. And then we've got our sections up here in this corner. It's just kind of hard to see. Pull those down a little bit there. Our inner section here probably has the slightest indentation there. And then we can see that the bottom section here has quite an indentation here. Again, we should be able to see for the most part along the bottom view here exactly where these sections need to go. Yeah. Okay, that's looking good from the front. And we'll double check the side here. And as we're positioning these here, what we want to make sure that we do is maybe actually overlap slightly on this section, because this is an area here where the grill actually starts, so we want that to overlap slightly. Pull it down. Perfect. Okay. What we can do here, we can have a quick look at the reference images just to see. So we can see that on this side section here, let's see if it's got any better angles there. The side section here doesn't actually go in that far, so we can see that actually stops for the grill there. So what we can do is we can aim to bring these bits forward. Like so. And then we'll just make sure that everything is aligned nicely at the top. So we know that all these ones in the middle here. Let's just check the positioning of this one from the side if we can see. So we know that this one's positioned perfectly. So what that means there is that this one here now we should be pulling in to reflect a similar distance for the side. Perfect. Okay, it's looking good. And then cap off the episode here. We're going to hit Control D, Control G, and we'll flip this onto the other side so we can see the car developing. Okay, perfect. Okay guys, so that's it for this episode. What we're going to do in the next episode is we will probably start to work on the wing here, and then maybe start working up towards the roof and down to get started on the back. Cool.